Today I will show you an experience, science fiction film from 2022, named Moonfall. Spoilers ahead. Look out and take care. In 2011, space travelers Brian, Jacinda and Marcus are in a mission to fix a satellite when out of nowhere their frameworks begin failing and something phenomenal shows up before them. A peculiar metallic dark multitude. This multitude accompanies them and raises a ruckus around town, taking out Jacinda and cutting Marcus's tie. Brian attempts to snatch him before he drifts away, yet the bus pulls at his own tie, and he loses his companion to the risks of room. In the wake of reappearing the van, Brian attempts to contact Marcus, yet the frameworks are down. While he attempts to figure out how to get back to Earth, he doesn't see the multitude entering an opening in the moon. Brian effectively figures out how to land the bus back in the world. What's more, from the outset, he's viewed as a legend for such a deed. In any case, following 18 months in length examination, no one trusts the story. What's more, Johnson can't safeguard him since she was oblivious while everything occurred. NASA concludes the occurrence was brought about by human blunder and fires Brian. He loses his home, so his better half, Brenda and his child Sonny moved with Brenda's mom. After 10 years, Casey Houseman is filling in as a janitor at the College of California. Not surprisingly, he sneaks inside teachers' workplaces to utilize their PCs. He signs in Stu's public observatory to utilize their doescopy and even calls them claiming to be a teacher, just to demand a record with the following of the moon circle to be shipped off his own email rather than the teacher's. A while later, he races to his second occupation as a cheap food clerk. However, he scarcely labors for a couple of moments before he's having some time off to take a gander at the email the observatory has sent him. His hypothesis is correct. The moon's circle is going nearer to Earth. He endeavors to call NASA, professing to be a specialist to be treated in a serious way, yet all at once it's pointless. The main public telephone number is for NASA's gift shop, and they don't have an association with the higher-ups. In the meantime, Jacinda is called into work staggeringly promptly in the first part of the day. Subsequent to keeping an eye on her child, Jimmy, and carefully guiding his caretaker, Michelle, she goes to the space community where she's educated that the moon's circle has moved. Their satellite has likewise gotten something odd on the moon's surface. Odd energy emerging from an opening on the cavity floor. Back to Casey, he's burned out on not getting any place with calls. So when he gets the paper, his feline peed on and sees it's Space Explorer Day at the exhibition hall. He prints his examination and drives there. A gathering of children on a school trip believe he's the one that will be giving them a talk. So Casey takes the risk to pass on his hypotheses. He accepts the moon is a counterfeit tuber structure worked by outsiders and accordingly empty inside. The person who should give this discussion is Brian, who is slept in and has awakened by his property manager requesting a very long time of late lease. Brian gets away from through the window and drives to the exhibition hall, where Casey quickly fills him in regarding his disclosure. Brian doesn't trust him and gets security to throw him out. However, before he leaves, Casey tosses his examination papers at Brian, who gets them and tosses them in the junk. Afterward, Brian gets a call from Brenda requesting that he turn on the television. Sonny is showing up on the news since he got on a rapid pursuit with the police. After 3 days, Brian attends Sonny's court date and demolishes the entire situation by continually intruding on the adjudicator and lying attempting to guard his child. This winds up with an appointed authority deferring the preliminary and sending Sonny to imprison up to that point. A short time later, Brian gets on the telephone to contend with Brenda's new spouse, Tom, who is paying for the legal counselor. However, Brenda stops their discussion. Meanwhile, Casey goes to visit his mom at the retirement home and tells her no one will pay attention to him. She answers that then he ought to cause them to tune in before she fails to remember who he is, a direct result of her memory issues. In the NASA workplaces, Brian is stunned to hear this and returns to the exhibition hall to look through the garbage bins for the papers Casey had left him. Also, when he finds them, he actually looks at Casey's side and learns of a crisis meeting he'll hold soon. The NASA transport arrives at the moon and sends a test into the opening, which consistently goes down for some time, until unexpectedly it starts returning up. Has the PC show the moon circle moving once more? Similar dark multitude from John Sanders' mission emerges from the opening and goes after the SLS, killing every one of the space travelers inside. In the meantime, Brian goes to Casey's gathering at a lodging, just to find him encompassed by a couple of paranoid ideas that can't tell reality from wildness. Brian interferes with his discussion and takes Casey to a cafe so he can hear the clarification of why Casey knew this before NASA did. Casey has been reading up far-off planets for quite a long time, searching for super designs made by outsiders, and was shocked to find the moon is one. A super design has an inflexible shell worked around a power center, and something probably happened to the one inside the moon to get sidetracked. At that point, the results of the moon moving again start threatening Earth. Waterfront urban communities are currently the survivors of tempest floods and record tides. The city is beginning to flood and the participation of the gathering can't leave the lodging now. So Brian sends them higher up for security. Casey doesn't move sufficiently fast and is hit by a wave. So Brian needs to bounce into the water to take him out. Jacinda and Albert investigate the mission film and arrive at the resolution the multitude is giving indications of knowledge. So it should be a computer-based intelligence. Earth isn't prepared to manage something like this. So Albert stops and makes Johnson to the new delegate chief. This is extremely dubious way of behaving and Jacinda requests replies. So Albert gives her his freedom, so she can search for the data herself. Jacinda goes to NASA's restricted region and finds film of her last mission that affirms Brian has consistently said reality, the multitude that assault them is a similar they're seeing at this point. She's then, at that point, drew closer by Holden Field, a previous NASA official that can respond to her inquiries. In 1969, when the renowned Apollo 11 arrived on the moon, it lost contact with mission control for 2 minutes, or possibly that is what the authority story says. As a matter of fact, mission control cut the feed off so the world wouldn't find out about what they tracked down on the moon that day. There were odd throbbing lights radiating from underneath the moon's hull and NASA chose to cover it up in light of the fact that innovation was a long time in front of Earth, and they didn't know they could stop it. There just should have been a tactical program called Zulu X-Beam 7, yet it was closed down for monetary reasons. Johnson contacts the tactical pioneers to check whether they can cooperate on an answer. However, they turn her down, saying, this is their activity now. She attempts to tell her ex, General Doug Davidson, that sending nukes is a horrible thought, on the grounds that the worldwide aftermath would kill everyone. Yet, Doug trusts Kin and turns her down. He additionally requests her and Jimmy to come to his home, yet she will not stop her situation in the midst of crisis. She maintains that Doug should send her the Zulu X-Beam 7, regardless of whether it is inadequate, on the grounds that its EMP is their main expectation. Doug acknowledges solely after she guarantees she and Jimmy will go along with him after the send-off. Soon thereafter, a tactical helicopter goes to get Brian at the lodging, and he acknowledges to go provided that Casey goes with him. They meet with Jacinda, who attempts to make sense of the things they definitely know. What's more, Casey concedes he was the one that released the data on the web. Since this man-made intelligence multitude can perceive Earth's innovation, Jacinda is enlisting Brian in light of the fact that he's the main space traveler who at any point land a van without power. Brian acknowledges under one condition for his child to be let out of prison and be brought to the station for well-being. After the arrangement is acknowledged, the team recovers a resigned transport from the historical center to be utilized to ship the EMP. The world starts to go through quakes and volcanic ejections, which doesn't appear to be legit. The moon needs more gravity to do that, regardless of how close it gets. Which is one more point for Casey's super design hypothesis. The military shows up at NASA, shows Brian how to explode the EMP and consequently, Brian makes sense of how they'll have a pilot doing the estimations manually, so they don't need to utilize gadgets. They'll just depend on their engines to land. Sadly, a tremor arrives at the base and harms the bus. Now that they're feeling the loss of a motor, they can't send off. So Jacinda thanks everybody for their diligent effort prior to advising them to leave and enjoy their last minutes with their loved ones. A great many people at the base leaves and when Jacinda is going to do likewise. She finds Casey actually doing estimations. The moon's gravity will be more than 80% of the world's force. This really intends that on the off chance that they send off the second of moon is right above Earth, they can utilize its gravitational draw to send off as the need might arise to compensate for the wrecked motor. Since the vast majority have left, they make a latest possible moment group to pull this off. Brian will direct, John Place will explore, and Casey will do the estimations when they switch off their gadgets. The water additionally contacts the bus. However, before it can swallow it, Brian figures out how to push far enough for the moon's draw to draw in it, making it workable for the bus to get off or up securely. The main thing they do is take the fuel from a close-by satellite to re-energize the bus wall. Casey continues taking selfies during the cycle. The moon is drawing nearer, so they need to rush. They switch off all the gadgets and Brian physically actuates the engines to push the van to arrive at the move, getting hit by the garbage on the way. In the meantime, Michelle and the young men are halted in the street by a gathering of outfitted men that take their jeep. Sonny figures out how to keep the firearm by dropping it on the snow before they ransack them as well. Be that as it may, the men take Jimmy's sack with his telephone. So presently they can't call Doug to choose them outside the bunker. They'll require another vehicle. So Radiant takes them to his mom's home to request one. Yet, the moon trash is beginning to arrive on the planet, and the closeness of the moon is making the weather conditions go crazy. So Michelle and the young men need to conceal in a wobbly shack until it passes. When the bus is sufficiently close to the moon, Brian leaves in a meanderer with the EMP and enacts its gadgets to set it up as snare before he returns to the bus. The artificial intelligence swarm appears, yet rather than going for the Wanderer, it pursues the van, accepting the EMP's controller might be standing out. Brian obliterates it, yet the multitude simply draws nearer, expecting to swallow the boat. Then Brian understands it's Casey's telephone that it can identify. So he obliterates it also, moving the multitude to in a split second disappear. Jacinda understands that it pursued them rather than the EMP, in light of the fact that looking for natural matter in an electronic environment is modified. This implies they should fly the van into the moon, and they just have 2 hours to do as such, or the tactical will consider the mission fizzled and send off their nukes. Back on the planet, when the breeze has quieted down, Michelle and the young men at last arrived at their objective. His home is inside a confidential area. So when they move toward the entryways, they're shot by equipped neighbors guarding their property. Fortunately, Tom knows about their appearance and goes to get them. Sonny scarcely gets time to rejoin with his mom and stepsisters, however, in light of the fact that they receive a message that everybody in the space needs to clear. To be protected out and about, they come by the fire station to take some oxygen tanks. Since soon, the awful impacts of the moon in the world will incorporate climatic dissemination, and it will be difficult to relax. They're out of nowhere tracked down by the men that took the jeep. In any case, this time, Radiant is prepared for them. He utilizes the firearm Brian gave him to abduct one of the danger. So they take all the oxygen vehicles and recuperate Jimmy's rucksack prior to leaving in Tom's vehicle. Subsequent to recovering the EMP, the van flies into the entire among the pits and goes within the moon. There they find Casey's hypothesis. It's valid. The moon is for sure a uber structure worked around a power center. At the point when they find a multitude, they prepare to toss the EMP at it. Yet, the bus out of nowhere starts continuing all alone. The multitude nearly gets them, however shockingly, an entryway opens and a light gets the van prior to shutting it once more and leaving the multitude outside. The arrival is unpleasant however, so the van is obliterated and the triplet falls oblivious. At that moment the bus entryway opens and a similar light start filtering them. The mission has taken too lengthy and the military is prepared to send off their nukes. Sonny and his family are being pursued by the burglars who are starting to shoot at them. So Tom fires back while Sonny gives his all to direct the vehicle away from the falling flotsam and jetsam. At the point when a hole opens on the ground directly before them, Radiant continues onward and takes the vehicle leap over it. This likewise assists them with losing the chasers, who are either hit by the trash or tumbling to the cavity. When they're at a protected distance, they get a call from Doug who lets them know he can't get them in the shelter any longer as a result of the rocket send-off. So they'll need to track down their own haven. As anticipated, the climate starts losing its oxygen and birds fall dead to the ground. So the family puts on the breathing devices before they take the street by walking. Back on the moon, Jacinda and Casey awaken to find they can inhale, and there's gravity around them. Be that as it may, Brian has no place understanding. An entryway opens toward the finish of the room, and they enter it no matter what Casey's doubts, on the grounds that Jacinda accepts there are two unique elements caught there, and one of them is attempting to help them. Brian is in touch with a decent substance at the present time. He awakens in an odd room and is encircled by a white light that makes him see pictures the substance uses to speak with him. Like appearing as Sonny to make sense of what is happening. Billions of years prior, humankind's precursors lived joyfully on a planet far away with innovation Earth hasn't even longed for yet. Yet, things changed when the computer-based intelligence they made became mindful and betrayed them by changing into vast multitudes of nanotechnology that pursued down all organic life. To stay away from termination, the predecessors got away from in vessels like the Moon, which had the mission to track down another spot to live in. Earth is the main spot they could find that could support life on account of being at the ideal separation from the Sun. This computer-based intelligence conversing with Brian, which is the Moon's super-working framework, needs people to draw in the multitudes from the center so the Moon will get back to its circle. Brian is liberated from the abnormal light with perfect timing to be found by Jacinda and Casey, prepared to join the battle. Brian fills his companions in while returning them to the van, which has been fixed by the computer-based intelligence. The EMP has likewise been given a move up to be adequately strong to kill the multitude. They just have 10 minutes left before the nukes are sent off. Be that as it may, Brian has an arrangement on the planet. One of Tom's girls has exhausted her oxygen tank, so he gives her his and urges all her going while he follows her. In truth, when she is concealed, Tom implodes on the ground and bites the dust. The young lady figures out how to rejoin with her loved ones. In any case, when they don't see Tom, Sunny chooses to go looking for him, which ought to be more straightforward in light of the fact that air is gradually returning. This is on the grounds that the moon is at last contacting Earth in the falling trash trap radiant as he moves away. So Michelle chooses to go assistance him. She tracks down him under a fallen tree. What's more, by utilizing the moon's gravitational draw, together, they move it away and run back to Brenda and the young ladies subsequent to hopping over a messed up span. Urban communities wherever are imploding under the moon's tension, and the military chooses now as the ideal time to send off the nukes. Yet, without a moment to spare, Doug rules against it since he believes his significant other and realizes she can save the Earth. This turns out to be an enormous penance since the dugout winds up obliterated by the falling trash as well. Inside the moon, Brian pulls a progression of troublesome moves to cause the multitude to follow them inside a passage. Then he requests that Casey prepare the EMP in the Wanderer. Since the multitude needs to distinguish life inside an electrical design, he will probably remain behind with the EMP while his companions get away from in the van. Jacinda could do without this thought. And keeping in mind that she contends with Brian, Casey chooses to assume control over the matter by locking himself with the EMP so he can be the penance, all things considered. As he says his farewells and requests that they let his mother know that he is a legend. He likewise concedes he is certainly not a genuine specialist. Be that as it may, Brian calls one at any rate as a noble gesture. The multitude swallows the meanderer and Casey holds on until he's profound enough inside to explode the EMP. At long last, killing it as Jacinda lands the van on the planet. A simple errand. Because of how close the moon is to the ground. With the multitude gone, the moon gradually gets back to its unique circle, and the weather conditions returns to typical on the planet. Jacinda and Brian escape a bus to find New York obliterated and shrouded in snow. Military helicopters come to get them in a couple of hours after the fact. The two of them get to rejoin with their families. In the interim, inside the moon, Casey winds up conversing with the harmless computer-based intelligence, which is seeming to be his mom while it makes sense of that it has put away a duplicate of Casey's cognizance. Presently he's important for the moon as well, and he can assist the man-made intelligence with starting revamping for a superior future. Make a point to buy it and turn on warnings so you can observe more recordings like this. Gratitude for watching.